One of the big issues in strategy research for the last decades has been the issue of relevance, practical relevance. Strategy research has been criticized for decades about its lack of relevance to practitioners. For an applied science, as strategy research is, this is a serious problem, and because of that, there have been a lot of discussions about this issue. Now, strategy as practice scholars have been claiming that they are in a better position when it comes to practical relevance because they study what practitioners actually do. So their claim is that when you study what practitioners actually do, you are also more likely to become relevant to practitioners. Yet, this conclusion is not so obvious, and that's what I want to look into and talk about here. Because what do we mean by practical relevance? Well, put very simply, you could say practical relevance means to produce knowledge that is useful to practitioners. But what do we mean by useful to practitioners? And there has been some research into different ways in which research can be useful for practitioners. And here we can distinguish three types of relevance, three types of usefulness. The first one is the classical one, which is instrumental relevance. So the knowledge that you produce helps the practitioner to decide on what to do. So you are in a situation X, and then you do Y. And instrumental relevance is typical of that nature. Whenever you're in situation X, do Y. So typical forms of instrumental knowledge are recipes, checklists, and things like that, which we also find a lot. Now, what does instrumental knowledge do? The instrumental knowledge actually reduces the complexity of the situation for the practitioner by telling the practitioner what to do. So this is one kind of relevance, instrumental relevance, and that's typically what is meant by a lot of people when they talk about relevance. But this is not the only type of relevance. There's another type of relevance, which is conceptual relevance. So conceptual relevance, or we can speak of conceptual relevance, when the knowledge that is produced by research changes the perception of practitioners about their situation. So examples here are uncovering causal relationships that have not been seen before. For example, side effects of activities, or showing alternative courses of action. So showing the practitioner that there are alternatives to what he or she has been doing and what he or she has been taken to be the only course of action. So you show alternative ways of action. So what conceptual knowledge does, it actually widens the view of the practitioner about his or her situation. It doesn't tell the practitioner what to do, but it helps him, her, or him to understand the situation in which he or she is. So that's conceptual knowledge. Then there's a third kind of relevance, which I won't go too deeply into because I see it more as a side effect, which is legitimatory relevance, providing legitimation to what practitioners do. For example, credentializing people or credentializing particular courses of action, or also providing rhetoric devices to practitioners. So now we have these three, and particularly these two types of relevance, instrumental and conceptual, which I'll focus on. And the question is, to what extent can strategy as practice research actually contribute or produce instrumentally relevant or conceptually relevant knowledge? Now, how do we answer this question? Well, you can apply the practice lens, the practice theoretical lens, on research itself. So when you analyze what researchers actually do, you see that when you do research, the practices of doing research means that you're actually abstracting from the practices out there that you are studying. So you abstract, you distance yourself from the situation that you're actually studying, the situation in which the practitioner is in. So you look at it sort of from a detached position from outside. This obviously means that you're looking at the situation of the practitioner in a different way from the way that the practitioner, him or herself, looks at the situation. So you understand the situation differently from the person himself. So you don't see all the totality of you don't see the meaningful totality of the situation of the practitioner. You don't see the practical necessities necessarily of the practitioner. You don't have the pressure, time pressure, for example, that the practitioner has in the situation in which he or she is in. So that means you see the situation differently. You don't experience the fullness of the situation of the practitioner. What is the consequence of this? The consequence is that you can't really understand the situation as the practitioner does, and hence you're in a difficult position to provide guidance to the practitioner of what to do. So ultimately this means that we are not in a good position to provide guidance to the practitioner of what he or she should be doing. So I would argue, and many others have argued as well, that we are not good at providing instrumental knowledge to practitioners. And when you look at research out there, particularly very rigorous research, there's very little in terms of actual instrumental guidance. And this is not surprising because, after all, we are not the practitioners. In the end, the practitioner, of course, is better in acting in practicing than we are. So we are not better managers than the managers out there, because in the end that would be really surprising. However, the situation is different when it comes to conceptual relevance. Conceptual relevance, changing the perception of managers, in that we might be quite good. Because what we are doing, particularly as strategy as practice researchers, we are studying structures that shape the situations in which practitioners are in. So in that sense, we are uncovering the restrictions that structures put onto the situation. So we can uncover to what extent there are constraining or enabling forces within the situation. And we are very good in uncovering causal relations that hadn't been seen before, in uncovering the contingency of certain courses of action. And this can be very fruitful to practitioners in the sense that it opens up their view of the situation and showing them alternatives to their own ways of seeing the situation. So what we do actually, we make the situation more complex for the practitioners. Rather than telling them what to do, we show them that the situation is actually much more complex than they might themselves have considered it. Okay, I won't say anything about the third type of relevance because I consider it more as a side effect of research. So what we could say here is that what we can offer as strategy as practice research, and where we are particularly good, is conceptual relevance. However, there are challenges to it. And the challenges have to do with the kind of situation that conceptual knowledge creates for the practitioner. If we compare instrumental knowledge to conceptual knowledge, the instrumental knowledge simplifies the situation for the practitioner. In the ideal case, we tell him what to do. Conceptual knowledge, in contrast, makes the situation more complex, more difficult to handle for the practitioner. So in that sense, the first challenge is the practitioner willing for, or allowing us to make his situation, which he or she himself might already find quite complex, even more complex? So that's the first challenge. Is the practitioner prepared to allow us to make the situation for him more complex? The second challenge is, in contrast to instrumental knowledge, conceptual knowledge requires some kind of understanding of the settled context within which this conceptual knowledge has been developed. So in contrast to instruments, which you can just use without necessarily knowing how these instruments work in themselves, what the mechanisms within the instruments are, when you provide conceptual knowledge, you have to understand the theoretical knowledge around it in order to appreciate the conceptual knowledge, in order to be able to make use of it. So in that sense, it's a challenge to the practitioner to actually engage with not the entire theories that we have, but sort of to generate at least rudimentary understanding of the theoretical context from which this conceptual knowledge was developed. So just to sum up now at the end, I have 3 key points. First, We are in a particularly good situation, in a particularly good position as strategy as practice research in terms of providing conceptually relevant knowledge. Second, this knowledge that we provide is of a more conceptual rather than instrumental nature. And third, there are certain challenges that come with this conceptual kind of relevance, and these challenges are particularly on the side of the practitioner. So ultimately, whether our research then is practically relevant depends to a large extent on the willingness of the practitioner actually to engage with our knowledge, the knowledge that we provide him.